And welcome to WoW Flash. It's my weekly look at the news from Warcraft from the past 7 days. And the big news, of course, is that the patch has finally been announced. It's coming out next reset. So the 77-day interval is alive and well. For those that don't know, this is the idea that between each patch so far in Legion, there has been a period of 11 weeks exactly. That's set to continue, which means if it continues to be true, and there's never any guarantee, Blizzard have never confirmed that this is definitely a thing, then that would mean 7.3.5 would come out on the 14th of November. That may or may not bring with it the raid. Generally, we'd expect the raid will come out at that time or around that time, but it doesn't have to coincide exactly with the same patch date. It would be after BlizzCon. Now, in other news, Gamescom has been this week. Blizzard have been answering a few questions. Quite a few of them are fairly obvious ones. It's a bit of annoying, some of the questions that were asked, but some of them were quite good questions. I'll be covering the main points of interest on that this weekend, but just as a couple of things. First of all, we were shown the new cinematic. There's loads of new cinematics coming in the Argus content in 7.3, but they showed us the very first one where we actually go to Argus. Shows Illidan giving the Prophet a bit of stick there. But also a very interesting question that was asked of Blizzard was about a future raid. Now, of course, we know that the Burning Throne, the raid that's attached to Argus, the last major tier of this expansion, is going to be coming out, well, if it's the 77-day thing, mid-November. But we could say anywhere between the end of October to mid-November, that sort of thing. Now, it's very likely to be after BlizzCon, I have to say. I don't think it would be towards the end of October because BlizzCon straight away there. Lots of developers are involved in that. Not a good time to bring out a new raid, is it? Especially if there has to be changes made. But nonetheless, it's going to be out well before the end of this year. But the expansion isn't coming out straight away at the start of next year. We haven't even started testing it yet, externally at any rate. So there obviously has to be content. We can't have another content drought at the end of an expansion, even though the content has come out at a good pace throughout the expansion so far. So it's no surprise that there would be another raid to come. But Blizzard responded. They said there's no more large raid coming. And they also said there isn't going to be a Ruby Sanctum type raid like in one boss. Obviously, that I wasn't playing at the time, but that was something that people at the end of Wrath were not impressed with. So what you can take from that is another Trial of Valor type raid, 3 or 4 bosses, I would guess, but you know, something that certainly doesn't fit the billing of a major raid, but also isn't a one boss pony. So that will be coming. So there's going to be a lot of speculation about what that could be, because the Burning Legion story of Legion is coming to an end. So it's not going to be related to that, but what it could be, who knows? Doesn't necessarily mean it's not Legion related. There was a post to do with the patch. When the patch was announced, the patch notes came with it. A little bit disappointed with that. I was under the impression that Blizzard were going to be keeping patch notes up to date even throughout a PTR. Now, either I've misunderstood that, or they couldn't get anyone who could be bothered to do it. But nonetheless, when the patch notes came out, the first thing I noted, I think in my stream, was, or someone noted and I commented on, there's nothing there for rogues. And I thought, well, that's strange because there are changes coming for rogues. So someone asked about this. Someone who actually was a bit comical because they were suggesting that they said that Assassination and Outlaw are like the worst specs for raiding, or amongst the worst specs for raiding. Now, in case of Outlaw, sort of true. Case of Assassination, what? It's not as high as Subtlety, of course, but, you know, to say it's a bad one for raiding is a bit baffling, to say the least. But nonetheless, they were saying that, you know, changes were supposed to be coming. Where are they? Blizzard's response was that there's a few specializations, which includes those two, that had some buffs removed for the latest patch 7.3 patch notes. Not because they're not coming, but they're not coming when 7.3 launches. What they said is that the reason those sort of changes were coming in because of poor scaling with item level of weapon. And of course, what's going to happen when the Netherlight Crucible comes out, we're all going to be able to instantly get an extra 5 item levels stuck onto each relic. So the item level of our weapons is just going to instantly increase. But that's in the 3rd week after the patch, not straight away. So what they're saying is they're delaying some of the buffs that are coming for that reason. So they're not in the patch notes because they're not coming out next week. They'll be coming out in a few weeks' time. They did say, in the future, we hope to find a better solution for the disparity in effectiveness that weapon eye level has between specs, but that won't be in 7.3. To be fair, it's probably not an easy problem to solve. Now, one thing that was really curious, and I have to go back on something I said last night when people were asking, do we have to do, because as is common with these sort of major patches, there's a reset of the difficulty of Mythic Plus dungeons, which means there's a reset on the cap that you need to do in order to get the best quality gear. And they increase the item level of gear that drops off each level. And what they usually do is reset it from plus 15 down to plus 10. And then in the next mid-patch, it'll creep back up to plus 15. So it's happening again, and people were saying, does that mean we need to do a 15 this week or a 10? And my response was, no, a 15, because the dungeons haven't been made more difficult this week. That's going to be next week. And what we're getting out of the cache next week, even though it's during the next patch, is based on the previous week. So that's how it's been before. So that was my answer. But Warcraft devs have actually tweeted, a plus 10 this week will get you the maximum item level reward for next week's Order Hall chest. So if you haven't already done your dungeons, you only need to complete a plus 10 this week to get the maximum item at any rate from your weekly cache. Obviously, the higher you get, the more artifact power you will still get. Next one, this is something that has come up before. It's a bit of an oldie one for Draenor Pathfinder. People have talked to me about this one, that if you didn't play WoD, it's very, well, you won't have flying in Draenor. So if you're leveling a character and you suddenly go to Draenor, you can't fly. And it's not as simple as buying a tome or something as it was in previous expansions. You just can't fly. And if you haven't done any characters, then, you know, because it doesn't matter if it's account wide, if you haven't done it on any characters. And you're not obviously going to do it while you're just leveling through one, so you'll be doing it without flying. So someone started up a forum post basically saying, is there any plans just to sort of allow this to be a thing? And I certainly think it should be. It's now old content. Why be so annoying about this? Just put it on the Flight Master, give it as another option, flying in Draenor. You know, whatever, 1,000 gold, who cares? That seems sensible to me, but unfortunately the response has come. This is not from a developer, by the way. This is from a community manager. Doesn't mean a development team aren't thinking about it, but at least they haven't gone public with it. So it says, while at this point in time we don't have any plans to remove the Draenor Pathfinder requirement for flying in Draenor, blah, 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 blah. So, no. But as I say, this response was from a community manager, not a developer. And I think it was from an EU community manager. You know, so they don't even have contact with developers. And the final point of note for the news this week is about anyone who may be running Windows XP or Windows Vista. Unfortunately, World of Warcraft will no longer have any support for those platforms from October. So what they've said is, as we previously announced, we'll be ending support for Windows XP and Windows Vista for several Blizzard games. For World of Warcraft, we're ending support for these operating systems in October. Microsoft ended mainstream support for these versions of Windows in 2009-2012 respectively, but since a major segment of our audience was still using at the time, we continue to support them. Now that there have been 3 major Windows releases since Vista's release, and a clear majority of our audience has upgraded to one of the newer versions of Windows, we are ready to make this change. After this time, Windows XP and Vista will not be supported and World of Warcraft will not run on them. We encourage any players who are still using one of these older operating systems to upgrade to a newer version prior to this date to continue playing. Sponsored by Microsoft. No, just kidding. But nonetheless, yeah, if you are on a computer that is still running Vista, poor dears, or XP, then and that's it for the news for this week. So just on to streaming news, just the usual thing. It's not really changed at the moment. It's still sort of 7 p.m. UK time. What should we say now? Sunday to Friday. That'll include some streaming this evening. Just in a couple, well, less than a couple of hours from my point of view at the moment, where I'll probably be streaming a bit of Lotro, but I haven't decided. It's just my general gameplay, playing whatever I feel like it. You come on and chat whatever you feel like it as well. That's fine. Doesn't have to be specifically about that game. And then Saturdays is going to be 3 p.m. UK time, so that's the afternoon from my point of view as well, where I usually go through LFR with a few else as well. Although I might have to mix in some Brawlers Guild with that. We'll have to see. I've been trying to get Meatball on a few characters, which unfortunately means having to do a bit of Brawlers Guild now and then. And then that's it. So the next guild raid is for us is going to be Monday. We're hopefully going to be killing Maiden then. But anyone who watched our stream last night will know we lurch from triumph to disaster, you know, very quickly, and anything could happen. We could kill it on the first pull. We've already demonstrated that we could do it, and we could easily not kill it at all. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.